Namaskar, friends. This is a small presentation on grounded theory approach. Uh, these days, in several disciplines, including sociology, psychology, anthropology, market research, archaeology, and history, grounded theory has become quite popular, especially among young research scholars and PhD students. Now, why did I feel a need to make this presentation on grounded theory? Is that quite often when students or PhD students or young researchers say that they are using grounded theory approach, they leave the impression as though they do not have to delve deeper into theoretical and methodological concerns. It's like uh, Srinivas using the term textual and uh, fieldwork based sociology. But, earlier sociology was largely textual based on what the religious books or books of law existing in India said and what actually the ground situation is. When a student says that he's using or she's using grounded theory approach, uh, the student does not recognize and does not feel a need to say something positive about what grounded theory is. It has a long tradition. It has its own concepts. It has its own strategies. It has its own way of approaching the problems. And it has its own expectations. And also, it's limited in scope, like any other theory or like any other methodology. It's limited in scope. Everything cannot come under grounded theory. So one should know clearly what it is and what it is not. The purpose of this small presentation is to touch upon this issue of what is the tradition of what is grounded theory, what is the tradition of grounded theory, what is unique about it, what preparations are required if you go for grounded theory approach, and what is not grounded theory. Now, this is a small presentation, everything cannot be covered, but certainly I would like to touch upon all major concepts involved in grounded theory strategy. And by reading from books, journals, and internet material, later on you can know more about those concepts. But there is a need to know about something before you leave for the field to use grounded theory strategy. What these things are, let me share my slides. I wanted to have a small presentation and I think it will be over in about 30 minutes. Originally, I wanted to have only 4 slides, but I realized that it's not possible to say everything in 4 slides that I wanted to say. And the density of slides was becoming heavy. So I went for 5 slides plus a slide of resources or references, minimum references, which you all need to go through if you are using grounded theory approach. So let me share my slides, friend, as this first slide shows that the founder fathers of this grounded theory approach are B.G. Barney, G. Glaser, and Anselm L. Strauss. And the basic book, the Bible, or the capital of this approach is the Discovery of Grounded Strategies. Friends, one basic thing one respect in which basically grounded strategies differ from other strategies or other theories or other approaches is that here the emphasis is more on theory generation rather than theory testing. Both Glaser and Strauss in their education were rooted in both. They were exposed to both quantitative and qualitative traditions. They were educated at Columbia University, where Merton had already produced the middle range theory, and in Chicago University, where the researchers developed and used qualitative tradition. So Glaser and Strauss had a very strong background of quantitative and qualitative theories. And then they developed this. Here, they wish to differ from other approaches prevalent at that time by saying that they are not testing any theory. In those days, people used to test the grand theories of society or substantive theories in various fields of application. So they start with a theory. It may be as broad a theory or as macro a theory as Marx's theory, Durkheim's theory, or Max Weber's theory, or some other theory, and test it on the basis of data, or it may be a substantive theory, Lee's theory of migration, for example, or some other empirical theory of your field, and you want to test it in a new context. Maybe something has not been done in your country, so you want to apply those Western theories to Indian situation and test whether they work in Indian context also or not. This Glaser and Strauss said that they are not testing any theory. The focus is not on testing or corroborating or falsifying any theory. In the positivistic tradition, there was an attempt to test a theory in the sense that to corroborate a theory on the basis of data, and in new positivism, then there was an emphasis on falsifying or rejecting a theory. So you have a theory and then you go to the field, collect data, applying appropriate statistical technique. You try to falsify or reject the theory, and the outcome is that either the theory is rejected or the theory is not rejected. But here they are saying something interesting, generating a theory, not testing a theory, but generating a theory based on data. This was a very revolutionary concept, generating a theory. And to maintain that there is no theory which can be applicable to all times and to all situations. They are not building any austere or formal theory of anything, but they are suggesting a strategy to generate a theory in your field of study. Now, if you read some of their works, it appears that they start with a qualitative. Many people think that grounded theory means qualitative approach. You may maintain this position, I do not at least maintain that position. Going by what Glaser and Strauss said in their classical work, The Discovery, I do not maintain the position that it's merely qualitative. But yes, some people can take it to be a qualitative strategy, and a strategy through which qualitative research is legitimized. So they developed a logical way of coding, theory making, summarizing data in a manner which is as objective and as valid as the findings of quantitative studies can be. What do they want to achieve? They want to achieve a theory, a substantive theory that fits in the ongoing debate. Certainly, in all fields of knowledge, there is an ongoing debate, and they want to develop a substantive. Substantive means something related to a particular field of study, a theory which explains some problem, some issue. Like there are so many theories of migration: push-pull theory of migration, Lee's theory of migration, statistical theory or econometric theory of migration, and there is a debate on what form does the theory of migration take. Now, friends, this theory can be a substantive theory. You can apply a grounded theory approach to study of migration, to study of domestic violence, to study of crime, to study any substantive thing, fertility, mortality. Now, this theory has a provisional character as enacted truth. This term enacted truth is also very important part of this theory. This is enacted truth, not the final truth. And how is it enacted? It is enacted in the field. It is a theory, substantive theory, that fits in the ongoing debate. So you have a debate on gender. There are so many theories of gender, and there are so many ways of looking at gender. The expectation of grounded theory is that it will generate a theory which will contribute to this ongoing debate on gender. But it does more than this. It does justice to people's voices. Remember that peoples are not respondents. People, in quantitative tradition, people are those from whom you have collected your data. But then the analysis and theory is not dependent on the people. Here, people are very much alive. And you are concerned with people's voices. You want to understand what they want to articulate in interviews with you on a certain topic, or the interview can be free. They have certain perspectives, and your theory must be such which does justice to people's voices and perspectives, and is useful ultimately when theory is generated. It should be an instrument of empowerment. It should be an instrument of emancipation. It should guide them. It should guide your people in their action. Actor. This must help the actors. And this theory is also expected to help the policymakers. So very ambitious goal. The theory contributes to the ongoing debate in your field of study. So it contributes a substantive theory. and it gives expression to people's voices and perspectives, and is useful to policy makers as well as actors. Another important thing is that this theory, you are not going to the field with any predefined framework. The theory evolves, theory generated, theory evolves, theory develops during the actual research process. It develops between continuous interplay between data and analysis. So data determines what kind of analysis you will do, and analysis determines what kind of theory you will arrive at. Analysis leads to concepts, concepts to data, data to analysis, analysis to concepts, and this is a long drawn process. This happens till you start feeling that yes, now you have understood, you have a theory. I have a theory which can be used by the actors, which can be used by the policymakers, which is a substantive theory that contributes to the ongoing debate in the field. And it makes sense. In this approach, a researcher speaks to data. This is a famous phrase from grounded theory approach. The researcher speaks to data. Researcher does not test anything. Researcher does not test whether a particular theory of social movements or neo-social movements, whether a particular theory is correct or not. But the researcher talks to data. Please tell me what is the theory, what is the pattern inside. Suggest me a theory. Researcher is asking the data to suggest a theory. And data is talking to researcher. Data is speaking to researcher. So this small phrase, data to researcher or researcher to data, they have very deep meaning. That data, when data speaks to researcher, it speaks to, data can speak differently to different researchers. Researcher speaks to data, it depends. How will researcher speak to data? What is the language of the researcher will depend on the biographic situation of the researcher. So it makes the matter very complex. But continuous training, continuous work, continuous reflection, abstraction, field experience, continuous work in this field can help you ultimately generate a theory in your substantive area of research. And this theory, what does this theory use? This theory uses constant comparison, or this constant comparison or comparative analysis. Comparative analysis is not the same thing as Durkheim's or conventional sociologists' comparative method, in which you compare two groups and you decide which groups they are. Here, you are doing a comparative analysis at different levels, between different subjects, between groups identified by your concept generated in the field itself. It's a very broad concept. Comparative, it's a comparative analysis. Concept to data, data to concept. And degree of theoretical sampling, you use theoretical sampling, theoretical questioning, theoretical sampling, and a degree of theoretical sampling, depending on the group or a category. Theoretical sampling means Theoretical sampling is not purposive sampling. Theoretical sampling means that in the process of research itself, you identify who are the people you should talk to, what observations you should make, and what documents you should analyze, and so on. What should be studied and how it should be studied, and how many cases should be studied, everything depends on the field, on the data. So while in conventional wisdom, before going to the field, you decide what should be the sample size based on the concepts of standard error and design effect, or the amount of error that you can tolerate in the results, tentative estimates of proportions, means, and variances, etc. But effect size, to be using a more technical concept. But here, your sample size and the nature of sample depends on the data. As you go deeper and deeper into data analysis, you may define your samples differently, and different numbers of situations, people, groups, categories may be studied, which should lead to concept development. And there is a relationship between data and concepts and categories to reach a higher theoretical level. I know that I'm dealing with a complex and abstract issue. Everything cannot be defined. But in short, I can say that there is a constant, continuous, symmetrical relationship between data and concepts. Data to concept, concepts to data. This is what Glaser and Strauss are talking about. It's not quantitative method, it's not qualitative method, but it's not that you do not need to be rooted in the established traditions, any of the established traditions, or you need not be aware of various traditions in the substantive area of your research. You need to be, before going to the field. Applying grounded theory approach also means that you are familiar with quantitative, qualitative data sets, methods of analysis, and the debate in the field. Now, what does it mean? What is grounded theory then? So there is a lot of misconception. For some people, grounded theory is just another name for qualitative research. And it's used interchangeably with qualitative research. No, grounded theory is not just a qualitative research, and it avoids total reliance on data. While in qualitative approach, you depend on the data, empirical data, you rely on the data and data only. But in grounded theory, it is more than depending completely on data. So it's a misconception that it's merely one type of or another name for qualitative methodology. There are many people who think that it's okay to use some epistemological lens. Wickersham used C. Wright Mill's lens of sociological imagination, distinguishing between personal issues and social milieu for understanding how to study learning outcomes rather than measuring outcomes objectively. Now, in this grounded theory approach of Wickersham, the aim was to understand the whole process of learning. How does the level of understanding or competence or relatedness to society or moral sense develop in the process of education? So it's not just outcome that you go with a pre-designed scale of outcomes and administer that scale and study outcome and then relate outcome to other variables. No. The measurement of outcome or understanding the concept of outcome in the field of education should also evolve from the research. That is what grounded theory is. That your focus is on the whole process, that both process and the outcome of the process need to be understood by the researcher in the process of research. And some of the pivotal points in this understanding of the process of evolution, moral development, learning, capacity building, relatedness to society, self and society, relating self to how do they become morally more responsible? How do they develop their reflection? Metacognition means their reflection on that they are growing or they are declining, whatever. What are those discontinuities in the process of education? Well, this was all studied through the epistemological lens of C. Wright Mills. Now, I have seen some papers using grounded theory that an attempt has been made by several researchers to combine grounded theory with positivism, with middle range theories, with constructivist position, with critical realist position, with symbolic interactionism, and with other approaches and theories and analytical systems used in their area of research. In an interesting article that I found recently, I found visual grounded theory for historical research. So grounded theory can be used. It has been interestingly and fruitfully used in historical research based on visual data. Visual data are now accepted in other fields of inquiry also, including sociology. And some of my students have used visual data. So an attempt has been made because grounded theory is so fashionable these days that everybody wants to use grounded theory. And grounded theory, therefore, has been used in historical research with visual data. And a person who gave strength, I would say, or who made grounded theory more popular, though in a wrong sense, is Kathy Charmas. Charmas talks about grounded theory as a form of qualitative data analysis. It's so the outcome of grounded theory for Charmas is a co-construction between the researcher and the participants, dependent on time, space, and circumstances. Something very close to relativistic or constructivistic position, or constructionist position rather. No reality, no absolute truth, all constructions. And constructions or meaning systems or ideas or outcomes all depend on the context of inquiry. Language itself depends on the context of inquiry. So all the products of languages will depend on the context of inquiry. Now this idea, this constructionist idea of Chalmers is refuted by Glaser later, saying that grounded theory is conceptual and based on constant comparison. So it's not relativistic or constructivist. As a matter of fact, it means grounded theory uses all sources of data. It's not just qualitative. All sources of data, qualitative and quantitative. And I'm just quoting from their basic book Discovery: interviews, field observations, other documents such as diaries, letters, biographies, autobiographies, newspapers, and triangulation of methods. That means combination of all these methods. This grounded theory requires great familiarity with data and often by a team of researchers. It's a joint work because the work is very ambitious. Work is not simple. You work with other researchers and you work with professionals. They themselves work with nurses and they wanted to learn about experiences of dying. It was not a simple project. You cannot understand the experiences of dying by using experimental method or longitudinal method or structured interview schedule. Now, all the theories and frameworks have some basic concepts. As I told you that I will, in the short presentation, I will not be able to do justice to all these concepts. For that, you need to read more and read papers in which grounded theory approach has been used in a classical sense or in combination with other epistemological frameworks. The basic concepts are slices of data, passive learning to new data, and all is data. All is data means all that you experience, all that you hear, all that you see, all that you learn through communication with the people, all that you read, all that you reflect upon, and your reflections on yourself, all are data. And from these data, you go to higher order concepts. Here, by the way, it will be easy for you to understand if I tell that Max Weber made a difference between first order constructs or concepts, first order concepts and second order concepts. First order concepts or constructs are the ideas with which people actually act in their life. What are their own concepts, their own perspectives, their own concept, their own perspectives, their own ways of thinking. Second order constructs are those which are developed by social scientists, by sociologists, to explain people's voices, people's perspectives, or people's concepts, which are first order concepts. So in the same sense, you have coding. I'm going to fifth bullet directly. Coding, open coding, which are simple concepts, which you develop to reflect, to explain, to understand the data. Axial coding, which are higher order concepts or categories, for which I use the example of Max Weber. Second order concept. Then you reflect on the second order concepts and you develop third order and so on. And finally, you have selective coding or theoretical level. The level, you have reached this level when you can feel, or when you are confident that you are in a position to generate a new theory in your substantive area of research. Another concept is conceptual density. This conceptual density is not the same thing as anthropologist Geert's concept of thick data, which means more elaborate data, in-depth data, data which explain the data at the surface. Your observations, and then to understand those observations, you have a logical framework or other observation, that is thick data. It's conceptual density. In grounded theory, it is conceptual density. As you keep on collecting more data, develop new concepts which require collection of new types of data, then again conceptualization, then reflection on concepts and new concepts, your conceptual density increases. So unlike as in qualitative research, it is not a total dependence on empirical data or observations of field work. Grounded theory means a high conceptual density in research. So there is also a conditional matrix. This conditional matrix is another concept from grounded theory, which means all levels from community to transnational. In your in the researches of those who use simple or positivistic approach, they often find that there is a conflict. The level of analysis determines the outcome of research. You may have one type of relationship between, say, income and fertility, or a relationship between brand value and buying behavior in market research. But when you analyze at higher level, say you have one kind of relationship at the level of respondents or individuals. At the level of households or castes or communities or villages or blocks or districts or states or nations, your relationships may change. Sometimes the direction of relationship may also change. Or whether relationship is symmetrical or asymmetrical, that also changes. What affects what? X affects Y or Y affects X? And what is the strength of relationship? Or both affect each other. This conditional matrix tells us whether something or what happens to relationships or concepts at various levels, from a small level to a higher level, community to transnational, for example. And in this whole process, then data concept, there is a movement forward, backward, downward, up and down. You discard, sometimes you discard, you feel that the data you have collected so far was no good. Sometimes you feel that more data need to be added. Sometimes you change the level of analysis. Sometimes you raise new questions. So there is movement, forward, backward, downward, up and down. And those who use grounded theory also make a difference between substantive theory of an area, for example, delinquency, health-seeking behavior, or buying behavior, or religious rituals, substantive theory, or a formal theory, which requires formal concepts, and the purpose of developing such a theory is conceptual. For example, stigma, theory of stigma. Theory of stigma is not a substantive theory, it's a formal theory. You define what stigma is, what prejudices are, and then what are the causes of prejudices, what do prejudices do, all concepts. So you do this for conceptual purposes. Another concept is categories and properties. Category means the codes or the concepts in the light of which you are trying to understand the data. So, for example, one category in study of dying, experiences of dying by our Glaser and Strauss was the experience of loss. When people die, what do nurses feel? Experience of loss. It was one of the concepts that emerged in the research. And the and whether this loss, experience of loss, is high or low? What kind of experience is this? What is the social loss? And this loss, so experience of loss is one thing, but how much or what kind of loss? When a 95-year-old person dies due to cancer, loss is perceived to be less. When a young person aged 45 dies of cancer, then loss is high. If a high professional, a doctor, a reputed doctor dies, then the loss is perceived to be more, higher. And if a beggar dies, loss is perceived to be less. So there are categories, experience of loss, and there are properties. What are the properties of those categories? One aspect in which I like the grounded theory approach particularly, and this is something which I always believed. Even when I was trained in quantitative tradition, basically. And I did not know, I had not even heard the term grounded theory when I was doing PhD. That was in 1970s. But I believe that unless the respondents from whom I have collected data to develop my theory agree with me that yes, my findings are correct, they do justice to their voices, perceptions, their issues. Or it may happen that I tell them, I go back, if I am an organization behavior theorist, I study some organizations. After analyzing the data and after completing the theoretical work, I go back to the organization and I tell them that these are my findings. Do you agree with them? And if my respondents agree, that raises my faith in my theory. If they say no, your findings are not what we believe in, then this raises new questions and maybe some more data need to be collected. Now, this grounded theory tells us that once your research work is over, go back to the actors from whom you have learned. If I am studying a social movement, some of my students studied movements like Muslim women movement in Lucknow. And we learned so many things about the movement, about the participants, about their vision, missions, strategies, actions, resources, organization, worldview, acting in a rural society like India, acting in a predominantly Muslim society, and so on. So I asked my students to go back to the respondents who were the founders of different organizations involved in Muslim women's action, and their clients, or the people, or the volunteers, or all those connected with the movement, and share the findings. This is what grounded theory approach, because we are developing concepts in terms of which people's concept or their voices or perceptions can be explained. So this is another way of testing whether we are right. And that here again, we can use that term which we saw in the previous slide, comparative analysis. This is also part of comparative analysis in grounded theory approach. Some may call it counter structural method. And then comes the point of saturation, when you feel that no additional data are found, whereby the sociologists or anthropologists or psychologists or market researchers can develop properties of a category. So all the properties of a category or the concept generated in the process of research have been exhausted, and so the research is stopped, saturated. Suppose we are studying the Naxalite issue in Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh or in coal mine area. Now, saturation will mean that in other types of research, NFHS decides about sample. National Sample Survey has a sample design. National Sample Survey also calculates the sample size that will do justice to their objectives of research. NFHS decides what should be the sample size at the national level, state level, district level. Because nowadays they want valid estimates at district level. Maybe tomorrow, if they want reliable estimates at the block level, then they will have to raise the sample size further. But in grounded theory approach, sample size is determined by the concept of saturation, or the whole strategy is determined by saturation. So you study mine workers, you study agricultural workers, you study union leaders, you study or you talk to or you interview company managers, companies which are operating there, coal mine companies. You talk to administrators. And when you talk to them, you feel that there are other stakeholders, or there are many others whose views are equally important or maybe more important. You feel that you should talk to politicians. You feel you should talk to police officers. You feel you should talk to transporters. And in this way, your sample keeps on increasing and increasing in both sense, in number and categories of stakeholders. This is what we do in grounded theory. To sampling, that is why the term is theoretical sampling. And saturation means when the concepts in terms of which you are trying to analyze your data have, in your opinion, according to your conceptualization, thrown open all the categories, all the properties of the data, then you are happy. All your categories and all their properties have been understood. That is saturation, and you stop working. Your research ends, and then you start writing. Now, in the classical tradition of grounded theory, even writing is part of the research because you are constantly reflecting on your concepts which you have generated in the field. So the last question, I said that I want to make this presentation for young researchers and PhD students. So the question, is it good for younger researchers to apply grounded theory? Is it okay? And the answer can be no, answer can be yes. The central point that I wanted to convey in this presentation is that do not use it as a way of escaping shackles of existing theories, data, and methodology. I know that several students who lack the quantitative background and who want to avoid learning or going deeper into statistical analysis or methodologies or the issues of sample design or other related technical issues, say that they are using grounded theory. So that means they will not have to know these quantitative methods, analytical techniques, and procedures, methodology. No, I would say that a grounded theory generator is well versed in both qualitative and quantitative traditions. The grounded theory researcher understands very well the process of coding, making transcriptions of narratives, coding them, and as I mentioned, 3 different types of coding procedures in the last slide. So you know the way of analyzing qualitative data, logical, objective, something on which validity of your qualitative work depends, and also the logic of quantitative inquiry. This is not to escape shackles of existing theories. And this grounded theory can be applied to study anything. I gave a few examples: experiences of dying, outcome of community learning, historical research, stigma, race relations. People have applied grounded theory approach to study of trauma, disability, racism, information technology. Yes, information technology also, nursing, public health, and so on. Now, Glazer's study experiences of dying, Wickersham, the process of community-based learning based on students' notes, identifying pivots in the growth process. Grounded theory may also mean multiple stages of data collection and theoretical sampling. So it's a process, a long process. Normally, our students can afford 4 to 6 months of time in data collection, but grounded theory may require more. And the crux, the soul of grounded theory, soul, I would say, is that the moment you start thinking of working in a particular area, you have data. Everything is data. Your books are part of your data. What you hear from your colleagues, your friends, your supervisors, your seniors, experts, that is part of data. What you see in the newspapers or magazines or in the speeches of political leaders, anything pertaining to your issue is part of data. And these data help you in thinking, in conceptualizing about your theory. Then conceptualization to data again, you go to the field. And again, conceptualization, new concepts, higher order concepts, density of concepts, conditional matrix, all those things will happen. And finally, data to grounded theory. Now, this data, which is written just before grounded theory, is not the same data with which we start. So the nature of data is constantly changing. Nature of conceptualization is constantly changing. Maybe the last part of the data are your conversations about your outcomes, your findings with your actors, your people whom you have studied. And then generation of the theory. So it's a very tough job. It's not an easy job. It's not a job in the name of which you can avoid thinking qualitatively, quantitatively, or you can avoid theories and say that theory will emerge from the field. That I ask a student, which theory are you applying? Are you applying positivist theory, or you are applying symbolic interactionism, or ethnomethodology, or postmodernism? And the answer is theory will emerge from the field. Theory will emerge from the data. So I don't bother about theory. That is not the right answer. Before you dare to enter the area of grounded strategy, you must be well versed in different theoretical traditions and analytical traditions in your field of research. And you must take a conscious decision whether you will go for classical grounded strategies as developed by Glaser and Strauss, or you wish to try you want to innovate something, you want to see the field reality from the lens of something else, see Wright Mills or Mars or any other theories. So this is what grounded theory in nutshell is. And the last slide is a quote. I thought that let me take you to a few original lines by Glaser, and this long quote is like this. Grounded theory stands alone as a conceptual theory generating methodology, theory generating methodology. It's for Glaser, who calls his grounded theory the classical grounded theory. It stands alone. In what sense? In the sense that it's a conceptual theory generating methodology. It's a methodology. It's a strategy. That's why the title of the discovery includes strategy. It's a strategy. It's a methodology of theory generation. It can use any data, but obviously the favorite data to date is qualitative. But it need not be qualitative. It can be quantitative data also. So you take quantitative data, then develop concepts. In the light of those concepts, collect more quantitative data or data of a different nature, then conceptualize again data. You can combine grounded theory strategy with quantitative approach also, as it is possible to combine it with constructivist position, relativistic position, and various types of epistemological, ontological, axiological positions. While interviews are the most popular, grounded theory works with any data. All is data. I like this phrase very much, all is data. For a grounded theory researcher, all is data. Even your experience of movement from your place of work or place of research to the field is part of your data. Your clothes, your interactions with people in the train or aeroplane or taxi, or your experience with the taxi driver, your experience with gatekeepers, everything is part of data. How do you approach the field? In what capacity? What identity of yourself you reveal to the people? You enter there as a teacher or as a doctor or as a researcher or as a politician or a worker, social worker. This is also data. The data may be baseline, vague, interpreted, or proper line. The data is not to be discounted as subjective. Nothing is to be discounted. In grounded theory strategy, nothing is to be discounted. Data are data, all are data. Subjective, nothing is subjective, obvious, constructed, etc., as we find in qualitative data analysis techniques developed by Kathy Charmaz and others. There is always a perception of a perception as the conceptual level rises. So concept to concept, concept to lower order concept to higher order concept. We are all stuck with a human view of what is going on and hazy concepts and descriptions about it. Grounded theory procedures sharpen the generated concepts systematically. Friends, this is what grounded theory is. I also want to suggest a small list of reading, and it is here. I'm saying this is minimum. I find that at the stage, our students are saying that they are going to the field and they will use grounded theory. They have not read any of them. Okay, you may have read something else. If you have read something else on grounded theory, okay. But reading is must. The minimum resources today I would recommend to anyone before taking up the grounded theory strategy is Glaser and Strauss, the discovery of grounded strategies for qualitative research. The qualitative research can be misleading in this title because later on in the book they will tell you that grounded theory uses both qualitative and quantitative strategies and can be combined with both and different lenses. And I have deliberately written this here once again that both of them were trained in Columbia's quantitative and Chicago's qualitative tradition and had a realist position. But one may disagree with this realist position of grounded theory because it's not simply data, it's concept. As the density of concept rises, we are moving towards grounded theory. And one can very well argue that this higher order or high density conceptualization of the problem is not to maintain or it is to reject the realistic position. So ontological realism may be accepted, may be rejected, but this is what they said. Another reference is Glaser's constructivist grounded theory, in which Glaser is reacting to that grounded theory is constructive, can be combined or can be constructivist. Then grounded theory methodology. This material is available on internet. This discovery of grounded strategies is also available on internet. PDF of this book is available. Then J. Corbin, taking an analytical journey. Kathy Charmas, constructing grounded theory. I know that some people do not distinguish between grounded theory and Charmas is constructionist or constructivist position. I'm not making difference between constructionism and constructivism, although I know that there is a difference and very significant difference. But for most people, for empirical social scientists in sociology, psychology, there is very little difference. There is they understand the difference between relativism and realism, and it is in that sense that I'm using this term. Then Charmas, the pursuit of quality in grounded theory. Charmas' handbook of grounded theory, a must reading for everyone. Charmas shifting the grounds, constructivist grounded theory methods. In our own sociological bulletin, there is an article by R. Ripriya, a young scholar of GNU. And that article is amazing for any student who want understanding of grounded strategy in simple terms and quite exhaustive. This reading of grounded theory in sociological bulletin will help a lot. Then Wickersham's article as an example of how an epistemological lens can be combined with grounded theory. And one more reference, text to image. shaping a visual grounded theory. This is not actually an essential reading, but if you are a researcher in history or you want to use visual data in your research, then reading of this article will also help. This will at least expand the horizons of researchers applying grounded theory or grounded strategy. So, friends, this is all about grounded theory. I know that from the point of view of those who have a good knowledge of grounded theory or who have applied grounded theory, grounded strategy in their research, for senior people, this introductory presentation may be too simplistic or may not be an adequate representation of what grounded strategy is. But my target is not the profession as such. My target of this video is a young researcher, a PhD student of sociology, market research, psychology, history, anthropology, who is going to use grounded theory in the research. So something, and the point which I want to make that grounded theory stands for something. And before you decide to apply it, try to understand what that something is. In a classical sense, grounded theory means something. Unless you have those elements in your research, you are not using grounded strategy. So what are those things? You must know them clearly. Just do not take the stand that I'm not using any theoretical approach. I'm not using any data. I'm just any quantitative data. I'm just going to the field and my theory will emerge from my field. It's not enough to say like that. It simply means that you are avoiding discussion of theory, methodologies, and debate in your substantive field of research. And you must also know what are the limitations or scope of grounded theory. Who can apply it? For studying what? And whether it should be possible for you to complete your theory generation in 4 to 6 months' time, which is usually given to students as part of their doctoral program, at most 1 year. No university will give you more than 1 year's time to do the fieldwork. So you should know the limits and you should know what it is not. For example, for me, it is not the technique of qualitative data analysis which Chalmers proposes and to which Glaser has responded. And it is also not a constructivist position. And grounded theory can be combined with any position, any ontological, epistemological, and axiological position. It depends on how creative you are and what is the aim of research. But never forget your actors, your people, your respondents. And validity of your theory depends heavily on whether it is validated by your actors, your respondents, the organizations, the client, the targets whom you have studied, and whether it is of any use to them for their empowerment and emancipation, and whether planning bodies, governments, state planning bodies, and civil society actors can apply it and put it to some use. Thank you very much. I stop here.